In a world asking the question, what if the movies that got delayed came out on time and they were different? That's the case in my universe. I'm Steven Schinder and you're listening to Delayed Replay, Season 5, airing every other Saturday, unless I change my mind. Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Delayed Replay, that podcast where we recap and review movies that got delayed in that other universe, but came out on time in our universe. I'm your host, Steven Schinder, and joining me, well, I'm not joined by anyone on this episode, and I'll explain why. So, the topic of this episode is El Muerto, which came out in January for us, but in that other universe, apparently Bad Bunny left the project, and I guess I don't know, it sounds like it's dead in the water. I don't know anyone else who actually went out to see this movie in my universe. I got my other self to watch it, but he's kind of upset that I made him watch it. Yeah, he really didn't like it. And it's not great. I'll get into that. So El Muerto is this movie about this wrestler character who in the Spider-Man comics only appears in like 2 issues. So yeah, this is another instance of Sony reaching deep into the catalog and not really caring what they pick up, I guess. So El Muerto, he's a luchador. In this movie, this is such an odd movie. It kind of feels like they were trying hard to make it more artsy. And for a while, if they kind of try to make it ambiguous, like what time period it is, but there are clues here and there that come up. But anyway, so Juan Carlos Sanchez is played by Bad Bunny, who wants to be a rapper, and you get all these scenes where he's rapping, and if there are even like full-on rap opera scenes, it kind of I guess it was trying to get ahead of the curve, like ahead of Joker 2, which is going to be a musical, and it did feel like this is trying to capture the artsy vibe, for lack of a better term, of that Joker movie from a few years back. Like, it's about this guy who, played by Bad Bunny, his character wants to be a rapper, Juan Carlos Sanchez, but his father, Estrada, who's played by Hector Jimenez. For those of you who don't know, Hector Jimenez played Esqueleto in the movie Nacho Libre, so it was really strange seeing someone of his not so threatening physique play Juan Carlos's father. So they come from a family where from generation to generation they pass down this luchador mask, and they each bear the El Muerto title. And what we come to find out is that the mask kind of has magical powers. It allows the wearer to glimpse briefly into the future so they can see a move ahead, and basically this mask lets them cheat so that they can win some wrestling matches. And I'm not really like that enthused about this. It doesn't feel very creative. It feels like they were trying to pull from other stuff that has been done with other characters. It's just, they're not really thinking outside the box here. But then again, it is wrestling and not boxing, And while all this is going on, Juan Carlos also has a job as a waiter. He's serving tables and whatnot. And people are being very rude and giving, really poor tips or not tipping at all. And there's a scene where he's tempted to mess up the food, but then, like, I guess his inner conscience speaks to him and he decides that he doesn't want to do that. But he carries a mask around, after his dad has given it to him, and so he briefly puts it on and sees that some criminal is about to try robbing the restaurant, and so he manages to stop that criminal because he glimpsed briefly into the future, and does this wrestling moves, throws him onto a table. The table breaks, and then people clap and they sort of hail him as a hero. There's a Daily Bugle headline that says El Muerto saves the restaurant. Yeah, it's not a very creative headline. I'm sure J. Jonah Jameson probably fired whoever came up with that one. There aren't really many cameos in this, which is surprising. I guess they were trying to make this feel sort of isolated from everything else. There's not really any mention of other superheroes, which is really weird. It really made me question throughout, like, where exactly in the Marvel multiverse is this supposed to be set? But yeah, he's got popularity, and so he's feeling like king of the world. But again, he has to continue doing the wrestling matches, and so he gets into this world that his father pressured him into. And he's winning the matches and, winning money and whatnot. But he doesn't feel very fulfilled by this. Hence why you get these scenes where he's in his room doing some freestyle rap, and they put these elaborate, like, set pieces where he imagines that he is rapping on some tropical island, and it feels like a full-on music video that goes on for like 5 minutes. And I'm kind of mixed on this. Like, I do enjoy when superhero things try doing musicals. I thought Legends of Tomorrow and Doom Patrol had really fun. Or was it Legends of Tomorrow? No, I think it was either Flash or yeah, I think maybe Flash and or Supergirl, or maybe they were both part of it, but it was in one show. But there's that and Doom Patrol. Star Trek Strange New Worlds had a fun one. Yeah, so I'm very open to those types of things. And some of the music here, I was not sure about. Maybe it's because it's just not a genre that I explore all that much. But also, like, the music video set pieces looked cheaply made. Like, you could tell there's some CGI backdrops and some green screen and whatnot. And I don't know if that's intentional, but I felt it was really distracting. And I don't know, maybe some trimming could have, just cropping some of this material could have made it a bit more palatable. Like, there are interesting lyrics. He talks about how, you know, I gotta fight for my dad, but I feel really bad, that type of thing. I'm not gonna try singing it. I'm gonna be really bad at it, I'm sure. But he has this dream that he doesn't want to just live in a dingy apartment. He wants to be able to live in a suburb. So, like, later on, there's a song where he imagines himself in like a suburban neighborhood with his own family and some stability, and the lighting is like super bright. It's that idealistic, I guess you could say somewhat outdated or some would argue, like, idea of, what's the dream, what's a dream way of living. Because, obviously he's struggling to make ends meet, and he has these hopes and dreams, and he also wants to be a rapper who is well known, but he sends these demo tapes to people, and whenever he tries auditioning, like, he doesn't get a record deal, and you feel really bad. Like, whenever I see a movie where um, a music artist is trying to get a record deal, I'm always feel bad whenever, like, how much of the struggles that they go through. So I did feel kind of bad at certain points, but I also continuously have to remind myself that this is an El Muerto movie. Like, it's a movie about a Spider-Man villain who's not so well known, and you can tell that they really want all of these scenes to fit together as an artistic masterpiece, but it doesn't quite always fit. There are these random scenes where, um, like, there's a train that passes by outside of his apartment, and uh, you get like these random shots of the engine within the train, and these long lingering shots, and it's like, what exactly is this supposed to convey? Like, I don't get what's going on here. Um, and yeah, sometimes the lighting feels a bit like certain parts of Eternals, for example, where I'm not really sure what I'm looking at. And yeah, this movie, like, overall is kind of a hard sell. Like, it gets kind of repetitive after a point, all these wrestling matches with the different opponents, and all these, he continues serving as a waiter as well, but people slowly kind of stop caring about El Muerto as much. Um, yeah, like, not everyone who goes to a restaurant is a wrestling fan, so they're not all familiar with the clashes that go on in the ring. But when it comes to the wrestling, there are lots of people who are doubting him and thinking, oh, he's cheating, he's a fake. And, the mask gives him these powers where he can glimpse into the future. So he really feels like he's a fake and his life is going in the gutter. He runs outside and it's raining and that whole thing. You have a shot where he's lying down in the alley when it's raining, and it makes it look like he is upside down, but it's really just the angle. Like, he's lying down on the ground, but his head is poking downward from the top of the screen. Kind of a not very good allusion to the upside down Spider-Man scene in the 2002 film. There are just random pulls like that, these very brief little shout outs. But then he gets his shot. After a fight, he's approached by a radio host person. And so he's able to do an interview about wrestling. And, he's answering all these questions, trying not to sound foolish. His dad even, like, talks to him before the interview and is like, don't make us look like fools. And so this interview happens, and at some point he mentions being like an aspiring rapper, and you get cutting back and forth to his dad who's listening at home, and he's like not into the whole music thing. And so during the interview, the host asks him if he has anything he can play, and so um, Juan Carlos plays the demo that he has, but it has some language that's not suitable for radio. Some of it is beeped out because it's PG-13, and the radio host loses his job because of this, and people, like, are kind of in shock that this was on the radio and it's like all over the papers, and he kind of becomes like controversial to some people, while others are like, yeah, it's not that big a deal, and he's like really trying to figure out how he should feel about all this, because people finally got to hear the music that had been within him, and yet it doesn't seem to be all universally loved. He bore what he had, but now he's second guessing himself, and he's spending long nights trying to rework his material because he feels like it's not good enough. And his father yells at him and is like very upset, and thinks he's not worthy of the mask. And he's like, yeah, well, take back the mask. And the dad's like, no, it's yours now. You have to use it. So they get in this argument before coming to a settlement. He'll keep on wearing the mask and doing these matches, but you can tell that some of this is weighing on Juan Carlos. And like the dialogue, some of it could be really good, but I feel like the delivery um, is not done very well. I don't know whether to blame the acting or the directing or what, but there's just something missing from the delivery in all of this. So there does come a point where uh, we kind of figure out, like, he had these endorsers, but now they've basically cut themselves out because of the controversies. So he's not getting as much money and sponsorships as before, and he's very upset about it. So he tries to take it out on the people that he fights and gets even more aggressive, to the point where even when the opponent's down, he just like brings them to the brink and is like, the referee's like, that's enough. Um, but then there comes um, a mysterious sponsor known as El Dorado. And, he's dressed up in his golden outfit, and he also has a sword, and he's played by none other than Oscar Isaac. And it's like, how many Marvel characters do you need to play Oscar Isaac? And he says that he will keep on giving El Muerto a lot of money as long as he keeps being as aggressive as he is. And so he's basically being enabled to be aggressive. At first, like, some of the fights earlier in the movie, he's just going through the motions, doing whatever will make him win, but now he's just like putting all his anger into it. And so he has to keep on doing this, and his father like notices how aggressive he's being, and is like questioning the morality of all this. And again, they try to make this feel so dramatic, but the editing and like the acting, the directing, it's just not quite coming together. It's not quite coalescing in the most convincing manner. And there comes a point where we find out when exactly this takes place. That's what I was getting at earlier. So I guess this is like 2015-ish, and we see El Muerto going up against none other than the human spider, aka Spider-Man. So yeah, it's a Tom Holland cameo. Happy birthday to him, by the way. He's masked in this scene, of course, and El Muerto puts on the mask, and he sees himself, annihilating like his opponent and unmasking him, because this is the thing he's been doing, is unmasking his opponents as he defeats them. But in his vision, he notices that his opponent is somewhat strong, but because of how aggressive El Muerto is, he's about to unleash all of his anger, and he sees that if he like gives it his all, he's gonna kill this kid. Like he unmasks him in the vision and sees that it's a teenager, and then everyone's gonna hate him. But and like I don't know if we're supposed to think that. Like again, the movie is not really clear of whether he feels guilty about the idea of killing this youngster, or if he feels bad about getting caught doing so. I feel like they're trying to insert this moral question, but it's not really all that interesting the way that plays out. So he sees that in the vision, but he also sees a longer a form vision where, because of Spider-Man being gone, there are like all these there's chaos across the city, and we see like some of the familiar Spider-Man villains, glimpses of them. Like they couldn't afford to bring back all of the actors, I guess. But yeah, the same chaos, and it's because Spider-Man is gone, and El Muerto thinks to himself, like if I win, I might be remembered, but is it how I want to be remembered? And if I don't win, then I'll for sure be forgotten. Um, but for the greater good, he lets himself lose, and so Spider-Man defeats him, and this is basically his origin. And I can't remember if this quite fits with the Jason Alexander as Uncle Ben backstory that we see in No Way Home. Like there might be details that might be slightly different. I'm not really sure. It's been a while, so I was wondering like months ago when I saw this whether this is supposed to be the same universe or one of the branching universes in the Spider-Verse, and it's like a Tom Holland variant. But in any case, they've been very cagey about it, which is ironic because like this is a cage match. But in any case, El Muerto loses. Spider-Man gets the glory, and he's going off to, the thing that happens where he doesn't get all his money. Like we assume that that's what's going on while we're following El Muerto's point of view, and he's walking off to a different part of the building, and he sees El Dorado, and he's like, "You were supposed to win, and now you die," and he almost kills Juan Carlos, but his father Estrada intervenes, and he puts on, he gets a mask from his son, and he puts it on and like fights El Dorado, but this results in El Dorado killing El Muerto's father. So it seems like he loses a father and Peter Parker loses his uncle. Like this all happens in the same day, like kind of parallel. And then El Muerto, Juan Carlos, he's out for blood, and he wants to choose vengeance. And this feels like the opposite of what Peter ends up getting, because, he doesn't get to confront the burglar, supposedly, at this point. And so we see how El Muerto deals with revenge, and he, without the mask, he beats up El Dorado and gets his sword and even breaks the blade in two. Like that's how furious he is, and uses both of them to like we see the shadows of this. He like stabs El Dorado to death, and he is found. It's basically a crime scene, and so El Muerto is basically locked up because of this. And yeah, it's a really depressing type of movie. And like he has this little monologue about how because he's behind bars, he's gonna be forgotten, but at least the city is safe. And then there's this closing rapping number where he talks about what the rest of his life is gonna be like, or he's gonna spend some time behind bars. Very not really specific in the movie about how much time, but he talks about maybe someday he'll make it out. And yeah, that song goes through like the credits, and we also see a glimpse of the restaurant, and we see someone ask, "Hey, whatever happened to that one waiter? What was his name?" And then it just ends. So, yeah, pretty depressing movie. I think they were trying to make it emotional, but it just kind of didn't completely work for me. Um, yeah, like it just felt like, they were trying to make a movie that would have had some depth, and it could have maybe worked, but because of how cobbled together it felt, and how it felt like they were just doing a deep pull from the comics just for the heck of it, like it's kind of hard to take as seriously. So yeah, this kind of is just what it is. I rate it 5 out of 10 demo tapes. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me on Muerto. Um, and yeah, you can follow me at Steven Shinder Facebook, or Steven Shinder Storytelling on Facebook, and at Steven Shinder on Instagram, X/Twitter, whatever, Threads. I'm on Letterboxd, Goodreads, uh, Yes Shift with my dad. You can find me on YouTube, and yeah, you can find all the stuff I'm involved with in the show notes at stevenshinder.com. Find my books on Amazon, and yeah, so without further delay, I'll pass it on to the other me to review some other stuff, including Madam Web of his universe. Hey everyone, so this is Steven of that other universe, and I'll talk about Madam Web and Spider-Man stuff in a moment. But first, I want to turn your attention to my YouTube channel, Steven Shinder Reviews in video form. I've been reviewing Doctor Who episodes. I've been coming out weekly. I shared my thoughts on the Star Trek Discovery series finale. I even did a video on Monsters at Work. And yeah, Monsters at Work season 2 came out earlier this month, and I don't see many people talking about it. So I gave my 2 cents on the show in general and how great it is at making the movies feel like the same universe, if that makes sense. I've also finally gotten around to watching Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, and it was garbage. The characters I did not care about one iota. It was just really bad and just a boring action fest. I also finally watched Dune Part 2 now that it's on Max. And look, Dune has some very interesting themes, but the way that the story sounds great if you just write out the premise on paper, but how it comes across in book form and on screen to me, like the presentation doesn't quite captivate me as much as it does for other people. So yeah, Doom Part 2 was okay. I know people said it was like 10 times better than Part 1. I don't really see that. It just kind of feels like pretty much on the same level to me. But yeah, film is subjective and all that. Honestly, I'm probably not going to bother with the upcoming TV show because, I've watched each of these adaptations, the 80s movie, the sci-fi miniseries, and now these recent movies, and I think it's just not for me, personally. I also watched Jurassic World Chaos Theory, marathon that whole thing in one day, and it's such a fun show, a great continuation of Camp Cretaceous. follows those same characters, are a bit older, and yeah, Jurassic animation is my favorite aspect of the franchise. So maybe that'll get talked about on IPC, Intergalactic Peace Coalition. They recently turned 10 years old, that podcast, so quite a milestone. So yeah, definitely check that show out. On Disney Plus, I watched the animated film Wish. So I watched that finally, and I went in with an open mind. I was like, it's probably not as bad as people are saying, but it felt half baked overall. There were songs I liked. I enjoyed half of the songs, but the movie ended up becoming generic as it kept going. The star character, like the design, doesn't look like there was much thought put into that. And the animation style, I wish they had just gone full on 2D. You put out this movie that's supposed to celebrate 100 years of Disney, and it just, like, I think leaning more into like the 2D of it would have improved it at least a bit. But yeah, Wish was kind of just there, I guess. And I watched the uh, Jim Henson Idea Man documentary that's on Disney Plus. I thought it was okay. It does show highlights like throughout his career, but I don't know. I feel like it could have gone deeper. I don't know if it was the editing or what, but I don't know. I was kind of expecting a bit more from this documentary. Like, obviously, I love Jim Henson and his creations, but the documentary, I'm not really sure if it did complete justice. I'm not really sure how to explain it. And now I'm watching a documentary on Max called Movie Pass Movie Crash, and it's actually really fascinating. There are some behind the scenes things that I was not aware of, so yeah, that's the thing. Godzilla minus one is on Netflix now. That's a surprise. Well, in the U.S. at least. I don't. Maybe worldwide. I don't know. I really don't know. But yeah, that's an incredible film. Like I've said before. I even put up a video on my channel called "Could the Last Jedi have done what Godzilla minus one did?" So when you finally watch Godzilla minus one, watch the whole thing, you'll probably get what I mean, and then you can watch that video. And I recently, earlier this week, went to see Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes a second time, so my spoiler review is up on the channel as well. And yeah, I love this film. Apparently in that other, the delayed replay universe, it's called Empire of the Planet of the Apes. I guess over here, since it came out like very close rather than far apart from Godzilla X Kong The New Empire and Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. I guess that's why they went with Kingdom over here. But yeah, over in the delayed replay universe, it's called Empire of the Planet of the Apes. That's pretty much the only difference, it seems. But yeah, incredible film. Second favorite of the franchise. But yeah, now for talk about Madam Web. So, going into this, we all knew this was going to be bad. But it wasn't quite as painful as I was expecting. It wasn't, don't get me wrong, it's still bad. But I thought that Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and Morbius were worse. I'm not sure if I'm not sure if Madam Web is worse than Venom. What am I trying to say? Okay, so Venom 1 might be the closest to okay, whereas these other Sony Marvel Spider-Man side character movies are bad. And I'd put Madam Web below Venom 1 perhaps, but above Venom 2. and Morbius. Getting my words jumbled up here. The I would say that the lighting is much better than those other movies, but even so, the action it gets kind of wonky. There's some weird zooming, and this movie, there is some interesting banter here and there, like between Ben Parker and Cassandra Webb early on. And, the plot of this thing, I could see how if this were a different movie that did not involve Marvel characters at all, it could have been a somewhat more interesting movie. But as it's presented, it's like, what's the point of all this? And it is set in 2003, and I don't know how accurate this bit of trivia is, but supposedly it was set in 2003 so that they could include the Britney Spears song Toxic, which is funny because that song was not released as a single until January of 2004. And the album that has it came out in November of 2003. So you really question like how plausible it is for this to work. And 2003 like just feels very random because we'd heard reports that they were thinking of having this be a prequel to the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies, and then they changed their minds and wanted it to be a prequel to the Tom Holland Spider-Man stuff. And now it's just its own universe, not even connected to the Morbius or Venom stuff, which I think is for the best because those are garbage. But yeah, in 2003, that in this movie, that's the year that because Peter Parker's mom, Mary, is pregnant with him. His father Richard is off doing, I guess, secretive stuff. Richard Parker being who he is, and 2003 being Peter's birth year, I guess, wouldn't really line up with the Andrew stuff anyway, because the Amazing Spider-Man 2 takes place in 2014, and that's when he graduates. So we figure he'd be born like mid 90s, maybe 95, 96, 97, something like that. And Tom Holland Spider-Man, like that wouldn't have fit either, because in Homecoming and Civil War, he is about 15, I believe, and those take place in 2016. Ignoring the very wrong 8 years later thing at the beginning of Homecoming or whatever. So Tom Holland Spider-Man would have been born like 2001 ish. So this 2003 birth date doesn't really work. And it's also weird because you have these spider people being active before Peter Parker is even Spider-Man. You have Ezekiel Sims, the villain of the movie, and you see this Spider-Man-esque suit. The whole movie feels kind of like a fever dream in some ways, but not as much of a fever dream as I was kind of expecting. And Cassandra and these three teenage girls who each have these they end up with these spider identities, but they don't really wear their costumes at all in the movie until there's a final shot and there's shots of the future, because the whole thing is Ezekiel's like, oh, these people in the future, they're gonna be a threat to me or whatever. And there's stuff with Cassandra's mom that happened in 1973. So yeah, and I do kind of wonder if there is something to that. I post that posits that maybe some of the ideas for this Madam Web movie and for the upcoming Craven movie may have been taken from Gail Simone's DC stuff. I do kind of wonder if maybe there is some potential of that being possible. So, yeah, I really don't know what they were hoping to do with all this or why they're still doing any of this. El Muerto seemingly canceled. Craven apparently got pushed back to December because Sony supposedly believes in it, but I just can't imagine having faith in the Craven movie. It just looks like it's gonna be bad. So I and we have Venom: The Last Dance coming out before then now, and I really do hope it is the last one. And there are these plot leaks for Venom: The Last Dance where, um, I've heard rumors that have been posted on my social media, and so the thing going around is that Venom, because he's looked into the multiverse, he knows that Peter Parker is destined to kill him, and so Venom wants to eliminate Peter Parker, who at the time of this movie, Venom 3, Peter Parker would be about 10 years old. So if that's late 2010s, early 2020s when those movies are set, it wouldn't line up with Madam Web either. So again, Madam Web is its own weird universe. Um, so Venom: The Last Dance, like if that is the plot, then that's bonkers. I heard that the Madam Web movie was, I found this bit of trivia. I don't know how true it is, but that supposedly the initial script for Madam Web, which people signed up for, was to be about Ezekiel going back in time and trying to kill Peter Parker's mother before Peter Parker is born. So a very Terminator-esque thing. So I do wonder if they've transplanted that idea into Venom: The Last Dance a bit. But overall, it just all seems really stupid. Like, if true or not. Um, and I'm sure Venom: The Last Dance will probably have Venom doing the dance from Spider-Man 3, and people are going to clap and cheer, and it's going to be so stupid. I just want these Sony Marvel movies, these random projects to end. Like, there's no purpose for them. The animated Spider-Man films have been great. The Tom Holland Spider-Man films have been really good too. Homecoming, I'm probably the minority thinking that Homecoming is kind of just fine. I don't really like the way that the high school vibes are presented. It's kind of cringe in some places. But I thought Far From Home and No Way Home were great. Far From Home being my favorite of the trilogy. Again, I'm probably in the minority. And yeah, whenever the fourth Spider-Man movie comes out, I hope that it's it continues that the legacy of these Tom Holland movies in a great way. There are rumors that it might feature a familiar villain, but yeah, I don't know. And this lately the Spider-Man movies have been re-released in theaters, and each week the discourse online about this made less money than that. It's proof that like nobody cares as much about Tom Holland's Spider-Man. It's like these movies didn't come out that long ago, so of course they're gonna make less. And yeah, Spider-Man fan discourse is so damn annoying. And this re-release thing for these movies was kind of the worst thing to happen. And I don't know if the re-releases will lead to Amazing Spider-Man 3 or Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 4. I did see that Kirsten Dunst said that she kind of wants to leave things the way we remember them, and I think that's honestly based. It's a nice way to approach, whether or not to um, grab onto nostalgia. Because X-Men 97, it does kind of have a nostalgia skin, but it presents ideas in a new and fresh way. So it doesn't really feel as much like nostalgia bait. And so if there is like a Sam Raimi Spider-Man 4 or an Amazing Spider-Man 3, I'm honestly not sure how well those could be done. I was a bit more open to them a couple months ago, but now it's just, I don't know. I just want a good Tom Holland Spider-Man 4 at this point. And of course, Beyond the Spider-Verse, whenever that comes up, make sure that everyone who's working on it is happy. And yeah. So, yeah, Madam Web, I guess I'd give it a 5 out of 10. I think it's pretty bad. Um, 5 out of 10 spiders in the Amazon. Also, the fact that at the very end of the credits of Madam Web said like 100 years of Columbia Pictures, like putting this movie out for that celebration, I mean, big oof. I also mentioned it's probably low hanging fruit to say the end credits of Madam Web are the best part, but then again, they are set to the song Dreams by the Cranberries, so, low hanging fruit, haha. So, yeah. I guess that's it for me for now. This podcast will be back in 2 weeks. I think the next thing being talked about is Thunderbolts. So, without further delay, have a good day.